that fantastic introductory keynote. I think that sets up the talk I'm about to give. And really, the question is, well, why the hell are we doing this AI thing? You know, that's fundamentally the question. What's it for? You know, if we're just creating a machine to take over, then that's probably not what we want. So really, the future of AI is about putting people at the center of that. What is it we want to do with this fantastic pseudo-intelligent technology? And we can have the debate about intelligence. I completely agree with the view. It's mislabeled. It's a marketing term, essentially, at the moment, and it's used across everything we do. But really, the question should be, what do we want this to do? What do we want it to do for us? What do we want it to do for society? So that's what I'd like to talk about, and that's very much what we're focused on. And hopefully that's a more positive picture. So we have a challenge. By 2050, the global population is going to be something like 10 billion. And what we know is that that's going to place huge stress on the resources we have, whether it's food, whether it's energy, water. And indeed, it's going to place huge strains on society. We're already seeing that in the way media is used at the moment, the way information is used, and the control of that information. And essentially, what we have at the moment with AI is some technology giants largely controlling that information for us. And that, you know, on the current trajectory, is only going to increase. So I would postulate, what is all this about? What do we really want to do with this? So what I'd like to argue for is not just AI as a technology. I come very much from a technology, science and engineering background. And as I'll talk about, I come from a group in that area that's been at the forefront of AI advances. So very much science, engineering, mathematics. But that shouldn't be what AI is about. AI is about how it affects each of us, how we can use it as a tool, as a fantastic tool. And that's not the direction we're going in at the moment. It's really important, I think, to answer that question, you know, is this going to take over? Alongside that, I would put the question of what are we creating and what do we want to create? I mean, humanity is fantastic at creating things for ourselves. We also create things that perhaps we wish we didn't have. And that's where, I think with AI, this is perhaps the most powerful tool we've ever created. What do we want to use it for? So what we're trying to do at Surrey, and this will be a little bit of advertising, but I want to, this fits in with this jigsaw, is to shape the future. And we really want to change this. And why do we think we can do this? You know, all the money is with the big tech. You know, £20 billion being spent by just one big tech company on the forefront of AI. You know, a university, you know, is not even in the millions what's being spent. So how can you influence that? Well, you can do things differently. And we see that all the time with, you know, things coming from academia, advances in AI coming from academia that can reshape how we use AI and influence the big tech. And that's something certainly we've got a proud heritage of at Surrey, but across the UK certainly, and across universities across the world. That's our role, isn't it? To lead that path and to say, look, you don't have to do it this way, which is purely for economic gain and creating markets. You can do things another way. And that's where we need to go. There's other institutes around the globe that are following this. Stanford in particular, human-centered AI there, is one of those leaders in this space and in increasing numbers. So what we're doing as a university is reshaping this. And the key here is really AI is not about the science and technology anymore. It's about the application. So what's key to this is actually not just the technology domain and the expertise we have there, but bringing that together with application expertise, domain expertise, whether it's in health or nutrition or in business or the legal aspects of that. That crossover is absolutely key. And one of the problems with universities, academia in general, is we're great at working in disciplines. That's what we do. That's how we're set up. Actually, this is about something that doesn't sit in a single discipline. It sits across disciplines. And at Surrey, one of the things we set up is institutes that span the disciplines. So bring together all the activities of the university, and that's quite a different structure. So the Surrey Institute for People-Centered AI was set up 3 years ago really to change this. And you could say, well, certainly every university across the UK has an AI activity. Why is this different? Well, it's really integrating and putting resource into integrating disciplines. And that's what we need to do within this sector, really to change the dial. Because it's that discipline expertise that informs how we should shape AI. And again, putting people at the heart of that as a technology. And that brings together these three elements. We were set up to drive the research, but of course training, education around AI is critically important, and there's a real demand for that. And then, of course, the innovations that go with that and making sure we're achieving real-world impact from that. So why Surrey in this space? Well, Surrey's been one of the pioneers in this space, particularly of machine learning, and pioneering activities in that area, which fundamentally is what's changed the dial for AI, the current generation of AI we have. The ability to take large amounts of data and to identify patterns in that data. And I would completely agree, that's what that kind of AI is doing at the moment, machine learning as we call it. And this is just some of the spin-out technologies from that type of thing. So it's been driven by, very much from a technology, science, engineering perspective, with the principal benefit being, well, academic output, and then spin-out companies and things like that. And that's largely where AI, not just for us, but for others, is today. Particular interest in creative industries and that kind of thing. So where we have our expertise is creating machines that can understand the world around them. And that's been, essentially how do you take sensory data and understand that data with a human-level type understanding. So the ability to navigate the world, the ability to have conversations, that kind of thing. I think my personal take, having said that artificial intelligence isn't intelligent per se, I think it already achieves human-level abilities in some of these things, and it will go beyond human-level abilities. That doesn't make it intelligent. We can have a whole debate around what intelligence is, but we should understand that it will go beyond human capabilities in these things. Whether it's having a conversation, which is where we're just at the start with ChatGPT, or it's the ability to take a photograph and see what's in the scene. All of those kind of technologies, which are really what has advanced over the last decade, are where AI is today and where it's going to expand. And that's essentially the ability to take data, images, video, text, and learn how to identify patterns. And the key to understanding that is, why is that important? Well, we went through 50-odd years of AI before that and designing engineering systems to identify those patterns, to put the rules in. And essentially the big discovery over the last decade is we're really bad at doing that, and machines are much better at identifying what's important in an image, what's important in a text. And that's what's created the last decade of AI growth. That's what's driving those advances. And that's quite fundamental, really, because it's the ability just to take data, which we now have seas of data, and the devices in our pockets are a great way of generating large amounts of data and understanding that. What we've got to think about is where we go with that, I guess. So yeah, this is just a little bit about the center. It's been around for roughly 40 years, founded by Joseph Kittler, who's still with us today and very, very active in that space of machine learning, pattern recognition, international expert in that kind of area.
My name is Mirosław Bober. I'm a professor of AI here at the CVSSP. Oh, I'm very excited about AI-empowered society, and I think it's already happening. CVSSP definitely has got a very, very long tradition. The ability, the culture to impact the world, to contribute to the society. Every day we discover new applications. Every day we have new ideas. For example, we used our algorithm to analyze the images of eye to detect dangerous conditions linked to diabetes. When we work with the NHS, they had 50,000 of images on their database. And that would take technicians weeks to analyze. And we just used one of our machines and it took a few hours. And it wasn't even the most powerful machine we had. And so that application of this type of algorithms and systems means we can free specialist time to do the important things. We've been contacted by Metropolitan Police last year, and they said, well, we've heard about your work in visual recognition, and the problem we have is that there are so many knives on the streets in the UK. We really need to understand what kind of knives we are collecting and how they are being distributed. So they said, could you work with us to develop AI to do that task? Again, what is required is a very robust algorithm that detects the minute differences between different knives. So with our technology, this can be done effortlessly. A police officer can take a photograph of a knife he encountered, can submit it to our system, and within a few seconds, he gets a reference. So who is the manufacturer, who is distributing in the UK, what are the type of crimes that are linked to this knife. So if you have an early warning, if you have this kind of intelligence, you can take steps very much more effectively. If you can take this algorithm and help police or NHS get better outcomes, that's really very stimulating. It's the work that you can see impacting real lives, and that's really the legacy that you leave.
So I just wanted to show that as one example, my colleague there, Professor Mirosław Bober, talking about some of the work we're doing, which is really having an impact on society. And that's the key bridge. You know, taking this AI, he's an AI expert, but working with clinicians, you know, in the healthcare setting, working with, in that case, the Met Police on the knife crime problem. Real societal challenges where AI can make a difference and we can create new capabilities. And I think that's what this should all be about. So the Institute, this is just a little snapshot. We come very much from a machine learning, computer vision background, but bringing together the domain expertise, and that's the key here of what we're doing. So as an institute, we were formed 3 years ago, and we set up some challenges within the institute that are what we've been driving in terms of the research program. They came from things like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are all centered around the challenges for humanity, the challenges for people. And you can see here, I mean, at the top of the list, safe and responsible use of AI, which should pervade any solution. Does it today? I'll leave that as an open question. But, you know, the use of AI in media, in education, I'll talk about a media example briefly. We've just seen something from health. I think fundamentally, you know, how do we empower people? How do we solve or address some of the societal challenges should be what we're thinking about in this space. So I want to just talk briefly a little bit about work we're doing in the education and media. AI has a great potential there. Anyone who uses Duolingo will have seen the power of AI for language learning, you know, as a tutor. It doesn't replace people, but it certainly helps in that space. So one of the collaborations we're working on with the BBC is around personalized media. And this is really embedding this intelligence in media to make it more accessible, more inclusive for everyone. So I think I've got the video next, but I'll just speak about it first. So essentially today's media, we all get delivered pretty much the same thing. It's a flat structure. Maybe there's some subtitles and things like that added. Yeah? And that's how media is produced, whether it's news or entertainment or indeed education, or whether you're accessing a service. Now we know that we have huge diversity across society. Neurodiversity, diversity of language, diversity of sensory abilities, all of those things. So why not use AI as a way of accessing that? Actually, I'm not going to play the video. I'll just go straight through. The video will be, I guess, on the release anyway. So this is kind of current media designed as a one-size-fits-all. But why not use AI to embed intelligence into that? So to embed the ability to restructure that media so it can be individualized for all of us. And that individualization may just be based on interest or the time we have available. You've got 30 minutes for your car journey. Why not cut your hours program down to 30 minutes and keep the key factual information? Or indeed, accessibility of various different sensory needs, neurodiversity, language, all of those things. So this is something we're very actively working on. There's a whole range of things of why we might want this as an audience, as a user of media, and media being incredibly important at the center of lives. But you can look at different sectors there and this is UK population, the number of people that this might affect by taking content and repurposing it in different ways. And as I see it, this is the future of media services. We're already seeing this kind of personalization to some extent, but it will be a much deeper personalization. But the challenges are then to maintain the factual integrity of your content, to be able to maintain the producer intent, the storytelling intent within a content. And at the moment, again, limitations of AI, it has no concept of what a narrative is. There's no AI today that do this. It just about gets the connections across a sentence or across a short video clip. So we need to develop AIs that have that ability to understand narrative, to understand factual intent. It's not impossible, but it's something that we need to do. And that will enable us then to personalize content and have these possibilities. So huge potential for creative industries, huge potential for audiences, and this is one of the drivers for certainly use of AI in media that we're involved with. There's a number of challenges in that. The principal ones are how you create the content and then how you deliver the content at scale. Just talk a little bit about those. So in terms of content creation, it's a flat structure at the moment because of efficiencies. And it's quite difficult to break out of that, although there's examples of bespoke content where, for instance, you can adjust levels of audio for accessibility reasons and things like that. But it requires additional producer intent. The use of AI within that will make that process much simpler and give us the handles to do that, particularly once we get to AI that can understand what the narrative of the content is, what the factual integrity of the content is. So that leads into personalization and how you produce personalized experiences and the interfaces for that. So these are all things we're working on. And then the other part of this is, well, if you really want it personalized to the individual, how do you distribute that content? So we can do that today in a limited sense. We can distribute, there's examples of use of game engines, for instance, to distribute things using the game engine for Fortnite, different music experiences and that, they can be individualized. The internet, indeed, is a conduit to that. But of course, it doesn't scale in terms of compute power. And the Achilles heel of AI at the moment, which we haven't touched on, but is the energy use of AI and scaling that. And that comes into this as well. Yeah, we could manage to spend the entire BBC budget, I think, in a day, their distribution budget, if this isn't done in an intelligent way. So these are the kinds of things we're working on. Coming through, we're at this point within the project. We've been just recently launched a set of technologies at the International Broadcast Convention using AI within media to enable personalization. That's kind of a first generation of these tools that are coming out. They've been used in content like the World Cup to produce personalized content or personalized ways of accessing content, and various different BBC programs. There's actually a consortium of companies now working on this as well. But essentially, in this case, it's this link between AI and media and how we personalize, but how that can enable accessibility and inclusion with that. So yeah, a bunch of applications at the BBC World Cup. Spring Watch, which is one of the BBC series, identifying different animals and allowing viewers to interrogate that, and various other things, the Olympics, which has just passed, use of that for adding audience value. So these are, in some sense, quite benign and early stage uses of AI in media, but they have the potential, and where we're going with this is to address the inclusion barriers to media. And it's not just about entertainment content, it's very much about the services we all access, whether it's financial services or government services, all of these things that we use digital media interfaces for can be personalized. And that's where we're going. And that is one of the, drivers that will ensure that AI doesn't divide society, but it actually enables people to be included in society. So fundamentally, this is quite important going forward, and a global challenge as well. So with that, I think that brings me to a conclusion, but I've just given a little introduction to our take on AI and where we should be going with AI, and it's really about putting people at the heart of AI. If you take away one message from today, please take that away. AI is not all bad, but we have to think about how we want to use it. And that's critical, and that is the bit that's not being done at the moment by the big tech driving AI. It's very peripheral to their interests. And we have to get ahead of that, and I think the public sector universities are a good place to drive that dialogue of actually what do we want from this. Whether it's intelligent or not, it's certainly going to be powerful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Adrian. Just very quickly, the last thing you mentioned there is big tech.
Yeah.
In the drive to make mega bucks out of AI, how can we ensure that big tech does put people first?
Well, simply put, we can't, because they're driven by economic drivers. But what we can do is demonstrate there's a better way of doing things. Yeah? So for instance, I'll give an example of where we've seen that happening. So I mentioned the kind of Achilles heel of AI, machine learning, is essentially energy use. Okay. So we at Surrey designed a generation of algorithms that use about 1/100th of the carbon footprint. And those have been adopted across those big tech companies now. So it's simple academic advances, and that came about because we don't have the compute resources, the kind of sledgehammers that they have to solve these problems. So of course we have to be more efficient, but achieving the same performance with 1/100th of the carbon footprint starts to have an impact, and there's lots of examples like that. They are essentially, in modern AI, I would argue, is a sledgehammer approach. You take as much data as you can get your hands on, as much compute as you can get your hands on, you put them together, and of course then you're at the forefront. And that's that battle of buying every GPU that exists to do it, which is what's happening at the moment. No public organization, actually no state can compete with that now. It's the domain of the big tech. But we can influence that in other ways and influence use of AI technologies. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Hands up over there. I have to go all the way to Australia now. Here you go.
Hi. The longer I listened to your presentation, the more I saw all these beautiful, look at all this nice machinery and all this, and the more I'm thinking that we start with a little river that we cross with a bridge, and at this point in time, we have the Grand Canyon that we can't cross with a bridge. From what you presented, I have a very pessimistic view of future, as in you have reduced the free-to-air information that has served us well today to something being repackaged and is no longer available, almost no longer available to free-to-air. And you've created this monstrous digital divide that no one will cross, and you're impoverishing the majority of the people for the benefit of the small minority who can afford it.
Yeah, great question. I would argue exactly the opposite. So I'd argue what's happening at the moment is that social media is exactly that divide. Yeah? And who's that controlled by? Elon has a big hand in that, I think, along with others. What we need to do is actually create trusted services that, yes, can be individualized to our own interests. They can engage different audiences. We see a demographic, and this is a big problem for the BBC, but also others, that essentially the under 25 audience has defected to Twitter. Yeah? I mean, that's where we are today. You know, how can we engage that audience? Actually with factual information. The whole of the BBC's remit, and I guess a lot of news organizations, is based on trust. It's based on providing trusted information. And you know, I think we'd agree that Twitter and other services like that perhaps aren't based on that. Yeah? So what we're trying to do is put an alternative there. That doesn't guarantee we solve the problems, but it's exactly that social divide that's happening at the moment that we want to address. Yeah.
Isn't the alternative saying give me money?
Sorry?
Isn't the alternative saying give me money so I can give you that alternative?
I'm not sure I understand, sorry.
Quick mic there.
I'm saying is the alternative is now commercialized, this sort of pay per service, as opposed to being here is the information free to air as we are used to it in Australia with the ABC, or in the UK with the BBC.
There's nothing
It's
here
about
that says
paywalls,
it's not
yeah.
free to air.
Yeah.
This is about, for the BBC, it's about increasing audience size, and they'll be free to air. That's their whole remit as a national broadcaster. Of course, there will be commercial services as well, without a doubt, and that, you know, what's happening in that media industry at the moment is the commercial services, streaming services, have effectively transformed that media environment. So it's part of that. But yeah, there will be free services and paid services, I guess.
Leading on from that, there's a question from Abid Shah online. He says, the way machines are learning rapidly and replacing human tasks, should we be worried about human employment being impacted by AI?
Yeah, so
taking our jobs.
Well, we should be worried, I guess. But, you know, is it really going to replace things like storytelling? Is it really going to replace things like human value? You know, so this is at the core of what I'm talking about, yeah. Putting people at the center of AI. If we don't, then yes, it will replace our jobs. It's an automation technology. If we design it in the right way, it will empower people to tell stories, to do the things that we're good at, and do the things that have human value. Yeah? So we need to shape it to do that. You know, if we don't, then AI will take over decision-making, and that's rather worrying.
I think one more question. I'm going to go right to the back of the room there. Right, so please bear with me. I've got my running shoes on, especially. Okay, here we go. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'm here.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. It was really insightful. My question is, how can we really convince industry to actually fund the projects related to sustainability? I work in academia and I work in industry, and I have seen many geologists, for example, that they decided just to change the field because they said, even though like it is amazing, there is not enough funding for this, so then I needed to change my career, and then they started, you know, going more into, I don't know, identity management, privileged access management, cybersecurity, or medicine, you know, instead of going through whatever they really want. And I believe that this is something that it's really necessary nowadays, and especially, you know, with the prediction of all the people that we will have in 2050, how can academia convince industries to actually get funds for this?
Yes.
Good question.
Challenging, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you very much for the question. It's interesting, how can we influence essentially industries that are driven by economic gain? I mean, that's what we're talking about. And the way we can do that is to introduce value, audience value, user value for those things that then drives the economics. Yeah, it's very difficult. I think to get ahead of big tech at the moment and what they're doing with AI, I don't think that's possible. You know, that train has left the station. But I think what is possible is to show that there's other ways of doing that and that there's demand for those other ways. Yeah, you know, we should all, you know, really every time we use a Google search, we should know about the carbon footprint of that Google search. Yeah, what we're actually doing there. That's not in the public conscious at the moment. That needs to change if we're going to get ahead of some of these problems. And I think the same with, you know, how we use AI and how we use our data are things we need to be much more aware of.
But the curiosity is, we have this conscious, for example, to go to supermarket and they'll buy, you know, like many bags, but we don't have it, you know, when we use AI.
Yeah.
So that this is kind of strange in our society, in my
Yeah.
point of view.
No, completely agree.
Okay. No problem.
No, yeah, completely agree. You know, and we all sign up to, let's say, Amazon, and we do that deal. You have our data, we have convenience, yeah, of things delivered to our door. Yeah, you know, that's the trade-off at the moment. I think what we can do, and certainly you're seeing inroads into healthcare, improved healthcare where this impacts, but I think improved services, breaking down barriers to access to services, tools that really help the individual. You know, these are where we can use these technologies for the benefit of society. Yeah, and that's what I think we can influence.
Last note, are you an optimist?
Yes, yeah, fundamentally, yes, I am. And I think there's an opportunity here. I still think that AI, as we call it, is a fantastically powerful tool. I think we just need to stop for a minute and say, well, actually, what do we want from this tool? And that's the conversation that's not happening enough at the moment. There's a lot of pessimism around AI,
Yeah.
and we can flag up it might take over, but that's not really that helpful. You know, there's no chance of flipping the switch and switching it all off at the moment, because you know that's not in country's economic interest. So you know, it's about shaping that and making sure we shape it in the right way for what we want. So that I'm optimistic about.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we all have a role to play in that, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Adrian. Can I have applause for Adrian? Thank you.